Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? I want to introduce myself and thank everyone for coming. My name is Melinda Morgan, and I am currently the lead PI of the Transformation Network. I am assuming that many of you are joining us today because you are interested in submitting your own SRS, Sustainable Regional Systems NSF proposal. So I'm delighted to welcome you here. I want to start off by welcoming and having the rest of our team introduce themselves here, sort of in the order in which we have sort of listed on our initial screen here.
Sorry, I'm Julie Podowski. I'm faculty at Washington State University in the School of the Environment. I'm a co-PI on this project, and I help lead up the community engagement and some of our research working groups.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Stone. I'm at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and my role here is that I was the lead PI on the proposal during the proposal stage in the early phases of this project before changing institutions about 9 months ago. Good to see everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lonnie Sinigini. I am a co-PI for the project, and I am at the University of New Mexico Department of Community and Regional Planning. And I am also the director for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and tribal liaison for the Transformation Network.
I don't believe Dagmar has joined us yet. Dagmar, are you here? Dagmar is one of our community partners. I think she'll be joining us hopefully soon. She had another engagement right before this meeting. She's with the Bureau of Reclamation and is on our advisory board.
My name is Leanne Ratzlaff, and I'm the Senior Program Manager for the Transformation Network.
I should also mention that advancing our slides is Rachel Landman, without whom we would not be able to have done this webinar. So thank you very much, Rachel, for all your help putting this together. So we're going to get started here today. Again, the reason why we wanted to put this webinar together is we've been contacted by so many of you with your interest in knowing what our experience was back in the day when we put together our own response to the solicitation back in 2021. This is the current solicitation, and this slide is merely to let you know that we are not experts on the current solicitation. This is the information related to that, and right now Rachel's going to put a link in the chat to the webinar that NSF actually put together. I'm sure many of you attended that webinar. It's now available on their NSF's website. With Q&A related information on the current solicitation. It's a little bit different than the one that we applied for. This is the information related to the current grant. It is similar to what we submitted for, not exactly the same. Next slide. Go ahead. What we're going to be focusing on today is sort of introducing you to our team, the Transformation Network, or TN. We're going to be telling you a little bit about its history and our current research design, and emphasizing the lessons that we've learned in the process of writing our own proposal and also implementing our design in the past 3 years, and then answer the questions that you submitted in advance, and then also, with as much time as we have left, answer the questions that you have for us here live today. And then we'll be putting that information also up later. This is being recorded, and we'll be putting it up on our own YouTube site for other folks to be able to see as well. So this is where we're headed for the rest of our time together today. So our journey really began in 2019 with a workshop proposal that we received, a workshop award that we received that Mark actually wrote when he was at the University of New Mexico. It was one of a couple of dozen workshop grants that was received. And we had at that workshop, and I attended that workshop when I was actually came down from the University of Wyoming, where I was at the time, as one of our keynote speakers, Deb Holland, who was at the time, of course, she's now Secretary of Interior. At the time, she was actually a member of Congress at the University of New Mexico. And this is a quote from her talk at that particular event. She said, "Overcoming the existential crises of climate change, a growing urban-rural divide, and growing economic inequalities demands action from all of us. We need new partnerships, inclusive approaches, and agents of change who will fight together for a sustainable future for our urban and rural communities and landscapes." And we really took that as sort of a call to action. And after that workshop, we decided that when and if the opportunity came forward to write a larger proposal for a network, we would respond. And sure enough, it came along.
Great. So yeah, I'll expand a little bit on the journey that we took. And this is one of the things that perhaps separates the round that we participated in versus the current round, because the outcome of the last round was 21 planning grants. And I know that at least some of the names of the folks who are on the call with here today are recipients of those planning grants. Versus in the prior solicitation, there wasn't a round of planning grants, but there was this round of workshops that were funded, as Mindy alluded to. But if you all remember where you were, this should actually say, I think probably SRS 2020, because that's when the solicitation was out. So if you all remember where you were, put yourself back into the mind space of September of 2020. The planet was going through a difficult period. And, we'd been anticipating the release of the solicitation, and we wanted to put in a good proposal. But it was a very difficult time to be pulling together a team, because all of us were coping with the challenges that COVID presented, and especially in higher ed, of course, we'd all switched to online formats and all of that was going on. But we managed to pull this team together. There was 2 proposals that were funded in this round, and we've maintained a good synergy with the other team. The other group is known as the Recipes team, and they've got, I think, 4 or 5 institutions, mostly in the East Coast, that are running that effort, focused on food waste as kind of their core theme. And then ours, that we'll go into a little bit more detail on, that was focused on challenges within the Intermountain West. And then, as I mentioned, there were also 21 planning grants that were awarded during that window, to which some of you I know were the recipients. So this slide helps capture the spirit of the challenges that our team was really aiming to address. We had a group of researchers and collaborators that had been working together on different facets of these challenges, really for maybe a decade or more, maybe 15, 20 years in some instances. And this proposal opportunity allowed us to come together and try to amplify a lot of that work that was already happening in some different circles. So this slide helps capture some of the spirit of that. One huge challenge in the Intermountain West right now is on the topic of wildfires. We had researchers within our team who had been involved with this from a range of different issues. The policies and procedures that are used for natural resources management and landscape management in the Intermountain West are shaped by a number of factors, and the policies are the politics and history of the region. Not always informed and shaped in the most holistic way, the way that necessarily involves wide participation from all members of society. So these inequities are another set of challenges that our team focused on. In the Intermountain West, there's also a growing level of tension between urban and rural communities, and the rapid growth that many cities in the Intermountain West are now experiencing is only exacerbating some of those challenges. And then, of course, the Intermountain West is also like most of the rest of the country, but there's unique ways that climate change is playing out in that setting, especially with respect to extended droughts and water shortages, which is also fueling a lot of the challenges. So again, these were different topics that our team was already working on in different circles in different ways. And we, rather than trying to start something completely from scratch, the way that we came together and coalesced was by finding the common elements and opportunities to advance our work in these areas, by pulling together the team that we ended up pulling together. Next slide, please. So this slide helps you to get your head wrapped around our team. It's a large team. Several of the people who have asked me questions about our prior effort ask about the size of our team, and I respond honestly that, yeah, it's a large team. I think if we had, I wouldn't trade any of the people who were involved. They were all wonderful, but to manage this many institutions was a challenge. But as you can see from the logos up here, it's most of, or at least a large number of the big research state institutions across our region, from Pullman down to Las Cruces. And again, mostly these were institutions where we had existing relationships and partnerships that were going on and different aspects of research that were already happening. But we also pulled in some new collaborators to help round out the team and to make sure that we had the expertise that we needed and a holistic view of the issues that we're trying to face. Our goal is up here on the slide, and that is to build capacity for adaptations and guided transformations towards sustainable regional systems through innovative and equitable solutions. So it's a very broad and ambitious goal. Next slide, please. So this map helps give you a little bit clearer vision of exactly the region that we're talking about. It is a very large region. So again, to the question of how big of a region should I take on? We took on a rather large and ambitious part of the country here, but again, unified by some common challenges. Yeah, so we got the different universities represented on here. And also we have really emphasized 4 different target watersheds. So the study both investigates in a more detailed nature some of these questions within specific geographic settings, while also investigating some aspects of the questions across the entire region. So we have 8 universities, 5 of which are Hispanic serving, 5 which are American Indian or Alaskan serving, and we cross 5 different states. Next slide, please. And then this is one of the tools that we use to conceptualize our grant as we were pulling it together. We have a couple of different frameworks that we really built our proposal upon. But in a lot of our discussions, we realized that really we were dealing with a system of networks and how networks are represented in different ways. So we were taking on issues such as governance and participatory approaches, which really represents an interconnected social network across different organizations. We were dealing with regional FEWS, so regional food, energy, water systems. So it was really representing things like supply chain dynamics and how resources flow across different boundaries and between different systems. And then we were dealing with physical, geological environments, such as watersheds, and understanding how resources flow through those environments and how things like wildfires influence, for example, water security. So this was a helpful framing technique that actually is a graphic that was in our proposal that talked about these different network types and how they were interacting as a theoretical framing for our work.
Yeah, so I'm going to chime in here with some comments on our research design. So our project, like Mark has said, is large. We have a lot of faculty and students participating, and so these folks all kind of organize their research around either a collaborative working group theme or a place-based collaborative theme in the form of a charter. And so this is how we kind of keep track and coordinate across all these different research endeavors going on in the network. Our collaborative working groups are organized by cross-cutting opportunities for learning and collaboration around key issues in the Intermountain West. We currently have 4 of these ongoing, which include one focused on wildfires and impacts within watersheds or firesheds to communities and the environment, one focused on food sovereignty issues and regenerative agriculture, one focused kind of more broadly on water issues in different parts of the Intermountain West, and then one that looks really region-wide at urban-rural transition issues. Our place-based collaboratives we also have 4 kind of main groups within which folks in our network work, or are places where we can kind of dig in a little further because we have that extra expertise and or community partnerships going on in these particular regions. One's in the Four Corners, Three Rivers region down in the south part of the network. One's up in the north in the Columbia River Basin. One's kind of out on the east in the Colorado Front Range, and one is down in the Rio Grande watershed. You can go to the next.
All this work is taking place within a theoretical framework that we call guided transformation. And that theoretical framework was first articulated in our proposal. And I should note that our proposal is currently available on our research page, which is, so if you wouldn't mind maybe just making a link to our website, Rachel, that would be great. And it was more broadly articulated in our proposal, and we've been refining that framework, and we currently actually have a paper in review as a part of a special issue of Ecology and Society on convergent research in sustainable regional systems that starts to flesh out this framework in more detail. So hopefully we'll have it something more refined to share with you. This is actually a version of a figure that we have in review right now, and I don't have time to go into it in a lot of detail with you right now, but maybe in questions and answers, if folks have questions about it, we can talk about it. But it's mainly folks will recognize this sort of basin of attraction model from sustainable ecological systems theory, but it's also, it combines with SES frameworks, elements of what we call the SETS frameworks, sustainable ecological technological systems theory, and also from sustainable transitions research, in order to develop a theoretical framework that communicates how communities are facing regime shifts, and also how to focus on windows of opportunity that those communities can identify to target innovations within those systems and choose amongst possible emerging trajectories to negotiate those transformations of those changes that they are facing. So we're working across the TN with that framework, and at this upcoming annual meeting that we're having, we're going to be sort of checking in on how various folks are working this into their research design. Next slide.
Okay, so this slide here shows a snapshot of and the diversity of all the different partnerships that we had at the time of writing and submitting our proposal. The big part of of our a big goal of this network was to really move towards co-producing the research that we're doing. And in order to get to that point, we really needed to have partnerships that were already established. So as we were building our team together, most of our faculty research team members, came together with partnerships already in place. And so this slide here, reflects these partnerships. And these partnerships, might reflect, long-standing partnerships that some team members had where they've already, they were already working on projects together, and they used this opportunity of this network to further advance those projects. And then some of these partnerships also include those partners who maybe we've been in discussion for a while of, like, potential research projects that we would want to do. And we're waiting for this opportunity that, was provided through the Sustainable Regional Systems with NSF to write those projects into the proposal. Next slide. And so, as Mark had mentioned earlier, a big part of our overarching goal, included ways we could, move towards transformation by addressing, being more equitable and being more inclusive. And so a lot of the projects and the way we chose, our team and the way we built the framework for our network, it was built to, make sure we advanced diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that, as defined in this slide here. But also, as we've moved along with our network, we've grown into having more team members, more partners, more students. And so as we bring in more people to our network, we've made sure to develop programming such as like workshops, and we're currently developing some or in the stages of developing curriculum so that, our research team ourselves, can also have more understanding of what it means to have like diversity, equity, inclusion, and to move towards justice as we're coming up with these strategies for transformation.
Yeah, and so as Lonnie said, our networks are expanding, and she mentioned that students are involved in this process, and actually students are some of our most enthusiastic members of this network. Our goal is to actually include both graduate students and undergraduates in this research process. And what we found across all of these institutions is that we have quite a few students who are really interested in making differences in their communities. And so this type of research network and the work that they can participate and engage with through this network is really appealing to them. And so through this process, we've developed educational and research-related avenues by which we can engage with students more, both bringing them into STEM disciplines, but also introducing them to the idea of community-engaged research and how to do that in an ethical and transparent and efficient manner, depending on the community that they're engaged with or their location across the Intermountain West. Next slide.
All right, now I think this is the part of the of our presentation where we start moving into your questions. So this is our recipe for success, or responding to the questions that you brought to us. So our first question that we received, and I think any member of our team can kind of jump in on some of this. I might actually start to jump in a little bit on this first one that I assigned to Mark. But it relates to institutional support. And the question really related to kind of what our approach was to institutional support before and after the award. And so, Mark, do you want to go ahead and take this one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't think this one can be overstated, both the before and after part. Pulling together a proposal of this magnitude is a really enormous effort. I think that's pretty clear to everybody who's on this call, especially if you're going for it in this round. You got to feel for the magnitude of it. But all of the details will really consume you, and you need the right support structure in place to be able to pull it all together. And to be truly competitive, this can't be the type of proposal that comes together in the last minute and then you throw it in and hope for the best. This is the type of proposal that really needs to have a set of eyes on it early, the type of institutional support where you can get, for example, I think they're sometimes called red panel. Is that the right terminology gets used? But the early mock review, professional editors to read through it to make sure that everything is exactly in the place that it is. Red team review. There you go. And also, of course, it is really a challenge, at least it was for us because of the number of schools, to pull budgets together for something that's this complex. So to make sure that your institution is there, or actually that in the way that we pulled it together, different institutions were taking different leads on those different components because that's too much for any individual institution to take on. So we had one group like UNM was really focused on the budget components. So the University of Arizona helped us with the red team review, for example. After the award is equally important because proposals like this or projects like this are large and complex, just as large and complex as the proposal process itself. So, a lesson that I learned through the process was to ensure that you've got that support of in place and aligned really early in the process. Don't wait until the award has been made because you really need to make sure that your institution is going to be there for you. Should this funding actually come through for you? So it's really important to think about both the pre and post award. If you don't think you're going to get it, then don't bother because you should only write the proposal if you really think you're going to get it. And then in which case you should be thinking about, oh my goodness, what happens if we get it?
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I have some related things to say, but maybe during a later question. Anybody else want to weigh in on that one? We move on. Okay. Go ahead and go ahead and take the second one, Mark.
Yeah, so this one refers to the 3 years that I lost off my life by pulling this proposal together, especially like I said, in the COVID era when we were all spread exceptionally thin. Of course, you need a collaborative team, and no way does one person pull something like this together. It has to be a collaboration where everybody is pulling their weight and contributing where they said they're going to contribute. But at the end of the day, you need somebody who's really going to take the bull by the horns and make the tough decisions and make the final edits and make it all come together. So I always quote Mindy because she described me as the non-alpha alpha or the reluctant alpha, right? It wasn't necessarily the role that I like to fall into to just say, I'm just going to take this and run with it in different circumstances, but you have to have someone that's willing to do that. Because if you wait for everything to come together by consensus and for everybody to agree on every word and for every little component, you'll never get a proposal like this done. So make sure that there's someone who's really able and willing to take the driver's seat so that you can run with it and pull together in a timely fashion.
I have a question for you, Mark, related to this though. Did you think that much about succession planning during the proposal writing process?
No, not at all. So something that the winning team will have to do is write a project management plan. And even at that point, it wasn't something that I had thought about until our NSF project manager said, oh, you need to include a succession plan. I'm like, okay, why not? They're saying we have to do it. So that's the first time it had even crossed my mind. And it was just because we were told to. And it's a good thing we did because unexpected things happen in life. And here we are. So that was definitely, it would be good to maybe have some of those discussions during the proposal writing phase.
I just wonder if it's worth thinking about at this point for some of the teams. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Number 3, Julie and Lonnie.
Why don't you kick it off, Lonnie?
Okay, yeah, I think, as mentioned before, the way we involve stakeholders and community members, or the goal for our team was to, move towards co-production of research and The way to get there, you know, we needed to have these existing partnerships and collaborators in place at the time of the proposal writing stage. So that, you know, because it does take, you know, a lot of time to build relationships. This is, you know, the way we wanted to get our network off the ground, was to have our partners in place, you know, from the beginning of our network.
Yeah, and so I'll just chime in and say that, you know, part of what we wrote into our proposal and our project management plan was that everyone who does research, community engaged research under this network's umbrella, write up and think hard about what their community engagement plan is. A lot like a data management plan, but for how you're gonna at least think about initially engaging with your community partners, if they weren't already established partners, and then having a team and process for providing feedback on those plans to help people really work with communities in a way that motivates towards guided transformations in a way that is best for both researchers and the folks who they're working with.
Okay. This next one relates to questions related to convergence. What are your strategies for success? How do you measure it, etc.? Convergence is a big deal. It's a part of what you need to be able to articulate in your proposal. My thought is, I think, you know, this is a huge emphasis for NSF. It's one of NSF's big ideas. So I would say it's one of our large emphases in the network. I think having a sophisticated engagement of the concept of convergence, citing the literature related to convergence research, articulating NSF's own definition of convergence is important. For us, one thing that we've emphasized within convergence is that when you are responding to a societal need, which we're doing with our approach to convergence research, you need to involve community partners. And that's a piece of what we see as our role in helping to define the edges of what it means to do convergent research per NSF's definition. That said, I think one thing we recognize within the transformation network is there really is no one size fits all to doing convergent research. So just as I mentioned, we have a paper in review related to our theoretical framework of guided transformations. We also have a paper in review right now related to our approach to convergence research, where we line out our philosophical approach to convergence. And we do emphasize that while there's no one size fits all, you know, here's more or less kind of our guiding principles related to how we're trying to approach it. And one of the things we are really emphasizing is that it requires us to reach across a lot of different epistemologies, different ways of knowing, including within the academy and outside the academy, with different community partners who have different ways of knowing, including our place-based partners and our Indigenous partners. And that enriches all of us. And so how do we do that? How do we do that respectfully? How do we do that in ways that benefits our community partners, as well as advancing knowledge in the field more generally? That's a big piece of what we're aiming to do as we try and take on the challenges that we've defined with them. One of the things that we've built into our framework for convergence is kind of a reflexive engagement of how we're doing. So we've built social network theory and other things to help us sort of identify, you know, how we're kind of learning as we're doing, so that we can sort of do better with our community partnerships and other ways of engaging with our strategies to inform our work. So while I wouldn't necessarily say that we have strict measures of engagement of convergence, we do have sort of goals and for ourselves sort of built into kind of increasing our networking capacity within our convergence frameworks. So that's something that we definitely have sort of set forward for ourselves. And as a part of our paper, we kind of have our kind of some built-in check-ins for sort of how our sense of our philosophies of convergence are maturing over time. So that's what I'll say for that on that one for now. Anyone else want to kick in on that one before we move on? Okay. Looks like Dagmar showed up. Welcome, Dagmar. Are you there?
I am sorry, I had some connection challenges, but I'm here now.
Okay, well, I introduced you for yourself, so
Oh.
no worries.
Thank you.
Welcome to the party, and I will let you and Julie take the next question.
Sure, I can kick it off. So I had mentioned in the like a question or two ago that, you know, part of what we do through this network is really put some emphasis on our conceptual and theoretical understandings of what community engaged research means, but we also try to actively work towards application of this too. And so you might have seen in those intro slides that a lot of the institutions that are involved in this research network currently are land-grant institutions. So in part, we work through the theory and concepts of community engaged research across these different ways of knowing and community groups through our diverse faculty, staff, and students and community partners. But we also are looking towards really making a difference through our applied aspects of the research, and in particular, leveraging our extension folks at these different universities to help us make these connections with folks like policymakers or other groups that we didn't necessarily have partnerships with coming into this research network when it was first funded. Go ahead, Dagmar.
Sure, thank you. Apologies that I didn't get the proper background, but I'm Dagmar Llewellyn from the Bureau of Reclamation. Was involved in as a community partner in the development of this proposal, and also serve on the advisory committee for outside perspective. I've worked with almost everybody on this transformation network team from the University of New Mexico over a number of years on a diversity of projects, and think we've developed a really close working relationship, which I think helps the university in general and this project in particular develop science and tools that can be used in a practical sense in the management of our water systems, as well as other systems, land systems and community systems. For me, the water is particularly relevant. So yeah, I guess I'll just stop with that in terms of this, but it's important for the university and the project, but it is also important for us, me working for a federal agency, but there are other entities at different levels of government, as well as non-governmental organizations who sit on the advisory committee, and to help to steer the project into something that can actively be useful on the ground and support decision making.
Thank you, Dagmar. I appreciate that. Okay. I'll take the next one. Preferred team structure. This question was different universities, question mark, different departments. My answer to that is that I think the preferred team structure is to remember that this is a network. And so you want to create a team structure that's actually going to get you networked and get you cutting across the universities and get you cutting across different departments, getting you into interdisciplinary engagement. So you actually want to be getting out of your departments and out of your universities. And that's actually a little bit difficult to do because especially your reporting structures are going to want to silo you back and suck you back into those things. So like, for example, we're dealing with the fact I can see Leanna's smiling at me here. Because, our finances are built, we have, as Mark mentioned, we've got 7 sub-awards, and then we've got the main institution at the University of New Mexico. And then, we're funneling money out then through that into departments and things like that. So people get money through in traditional ways, but we want people doing work non-traditionally, as Julie was mentioning. So the next slide gives you kind of a window maybe it's the slide after that. There we go. This is a window into our current kind of research design. So you can kind of see kind of what we look like right now in the TN. This sort of upper right teal color is the administrative sort of staff folks, and then the TN lead here, and then the folks one drop down kind of below that are some of the sort of lead folks that help to sort of coordinate some of the key elements like DEIJ and tribal stuff. That's Lonnie. Convergent research, data management, community engagement. Then we've got our external evaluator and our advisory board folks. And then below that, this is our research design kind of core that Julie kind of walked you through. Our place-based collaboratives and our cross-cutting synthesis groups. And then our project charters, of which we have over 24. And it starts to look a little bit like a game of Twister, because like I'll just use Lonnie maybe as one example. Lonnie they're up there in DEIJ, but she's also involved in the one of the place-based collaboratives. She's also involved in one of the synthesis groups and in one of the charter groups. So you start to get connected in all kinds of ways, and all of those groups are involving multiple different institutions. And multiple different disciplines. And so that's, I think, the strength of this model is it had people spread out across different disciplines and different institutions. The weaknesses of this model is you have people spread out across different spread out, basically. And we all start to feel spread pretty thin. As we start to try and attend all of the meetings and all of the engagements that are necessary to sort of maintain this type of model, which is something we struggled with. This is actually a more simplified model than what we originally had, to be honest. And this group, the upper tier of this group, kind of the more admin side, meets every 2 weeks as the faculty part of that, and the admin team meets once a week, just to kind of give you an idea of what it takes to sort of keep this team sort of running and functioning, kind of along those lines. But then I kind of cannibalized another question. I'm kind of answering 2 questions at once now. There's one below, kind of getting to some of that, but anyway, yeah. Biggest surprise that you had to manage as you negotiated or began this award? Who wants to take this one first? Mark, why don't you go first?
Boy, my mind is spinning on that one. Biggest though. Yeah, I guess I already alluded to the project management plan that is required by NSF as a subject of an award like this, because these are cooperative agreements, not grants. And so we knew that had been specified in the solicitation, but I didn't recognize how much effort that was going to take. That took months to pull together, all in advance of the award. And in our case, that was over, just the way the timing worked out, that was over the summer. So it was a lot of legwork before the work could even begin. And that caught me off guard, just how much of an effort it was to get that going.
Yeah, I'll go next. I did not think I would end up being the project lead of this whole thing. That was my biggest surprise. So I'll say a little bit more about succession planning, since that was something that was listed as something someone had an extra question about. So your project management plan has to have something called a succession plan that talks about, who's going to take the lead if you lose your lead PI, and what's your process going to be for replacing that lead PI if you should lose that person. Just as a note, both our team and the recipes team lost their lead PIs in the first 2 years. So it happens. People move. These things happen. So good to be thinking about, having a deep team, having a deep bunch, as we like to say in sports. So, so I think that that's something for you all to kind of be reflecting on in your own with your own teams. And I think that thinking about not just who, but also the how to do it in a democratic way. That would be great. And I think that would be something to think about. I also think I saw that good. I think Julie answered another question about the project charters. The project charter is also available on our website for folks who want to have more information about the project charters. Those are you find more information about those.
There's a question about the project management plan that's due at the time of the proposal versus at the time of award. And because I think I recall, and I think it's probably similar, that at the time of proposal, there is like a brief project management plan that goes in. I forget how long that is, but maybe 4 pages or something along those lines. Versus at the time of award, it is a true full-blown management plan. I think with appendices, ours ended up being 100 pages probably, because we were adding like appendices that were things like the project charters. The main document was probably 40 pages or something like that, where you're spelling out all the different details, all the different milestones. So I think the same terminology does get used pre and post award, but the scope is dramatically different. That's how I recall.
Yeah, and I think what's required in your project management plan might differ a little bit program manager to program manager as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyone else want to weigh in on Big Surprise? Leanne, you've been with the TN now since August. Do you want to give a little thing on what surprised you the most?
I think that just the variation between institutions was definitely kind of a challenge, and something that is really just helpful to sort of expect going in, that like knowing that each institution, each team kind of operates differently. And so being able to figure out how to best support various individuals, and making sure that you have a little bit of flexibility built into the system in order to effectively support folks that are going to have different levels of resources, different expectations, different strategies for accomplishing their goals. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the things that's really come to light for me as program manager, is really being adaptive and responsive to your collaborators, and really ensuring that the communication is first and foremost, that knowing that you can have those really strong relationships and building that rapport along the way, and knowing that especially if there are changes in staffing, and making sure that they do have sort of that individual or a couple of folks that can support kind of that administrative side is really helpful.
If nobody else want to weigh in on the surprise, maybe we're starting to run out of time. So do you want to go ahead and take on number 2?
Yeah, so this one, we haven't done any formal evaluations around too many of the activities, but this is definitely something that has come up as a point of interest. And I think one of the biggest benefits of this question is really to make sure that we are being transparent about what does the definition of success mean around these items. And so one of the things that we really strive to do is embed our DEIJ activities into ongoing everyday activities that are happening across the TN, but really being able to sort of conceptualize, what does that look like? What does that mean? How do we define it? Coming up with those specific metrics. And so that's something that we are still actively working on, and trying to ensure that we are providing some structure around that. And so we do have a series of items that are specific to our communities that are Indigenous. And so we're really trying to think about kind of some of those pieces, and making sure that it is really tangible and bounded, because I think that it is often easy to fall into lip service in these areas.
Thank you. I would just add also that we have an external evaluator that is a paid member that we've hired from the very beginning, that evaluates all of our activities, education, all of our. She's just currently making a circuit, visiting all of our external, not external, excuse me, all of the different sort of universities right now. She's kind of making a circuit and meeting with all of the different sort of sub-award. She's sort of based here in New Mexico, but she's visiting, I think she just visited University of Arizona and University of Colorado. And I think, has she come up to you yet, Julie?
Yeah, she's up with us tomorrow.
Okay, so she's heading up to visit with Julie tomorrow. So she does regularly assessments after each one of our engagements that we do as a larger group. So, and she provides an assessment following and submitting with each one of our reports. So that's a very large portion of where our funding goes as a part of our award, and is a big part of any budget that happens with one of these cooperative agreements. And I already took number 3. And I already talked about that. So I'll just quickly talk about this so we can try and take remaining questions. Administrative support is huge. One thing I kind of wish many of the sub-awards had done is think about building more administrative support into their sub-awards. We built administrative support into the home institutions grant, but that wasn't as strongly built into some of the sub-awards. And some of the sub-awards are very large, and probably need at least a half-time person administering that award. And so I think if we had really thought through that, I think maybe we would have sort of thought about how we were going to do some of the larger administrative support structure through the whole grant. Communication platforms and tool protocols. This is something we've thought about and struggled with quite a bit, because there's no one way people like to communicate these days, and to some extent that's really generational as well. And of course we span from boomers to Gen Z, and so we've now taken our second attempt at Slack, and I think it's working pretty darn well with a paid subscription to Slack at this point. So that supplemented with a listserv that's hosted by UNM, I think is doing pretty well with communication strategies. But we use a variety of communication strategies. But I think that that is an ongoing and ongoing adjustments as to the best ways to sort of reach people and communicate. But so something definitely worth thinking about with your team as the best way people want to be heard from and reached, because you can hit fatigue pretty quickly. People will just completely zone you out. Templates and other ways to create efficiencies. This has been, I think, something that people have really appreciated. Something that Leanne and Rachel, especially since they've joined our team, have really made a special effort to try and find ways to make things simpler for folks and make things more easier to use. Just these lovely backgrounds that Rachel created are an example of things that are now available to any member of our team. We created an orientation slide deck recently that folks can use for onboarding new staff and students, things like that. Just make things just an easier lift for faculty, etc. Creating a guiding orientation for expectations and that kind of thing can be very helpful for folks. And as we've already said many times, the project management plan is key. So it's probably not too early for those of you who are starting to think about your proposal. Think about how it might translate to actual project management, because this is different from a normal award. As a cooperative agreement, it has a different level of ongoing relationship that has a level of intensity that's a little bit different from a normal grant. Next slide. So now we're ready for more questions, and I would just say one last slide is just, these are different ways that you can continue to stay in communication with us. Please follow us. These are the ways to connect with us online and via social media. We are doing a much better job these days of feeding these platforms, so stay connected with us. And I would say go ahead and unshare the slide deck now so we can see everyone. And I think there's a lot of communication happening in the chat right now that I've been missing. So I will just open it up now for more questions and see what people might have. Any other questions that people might have? Or does anybody want to catch me up on what's going on in the chat?
I think the chat's caught up. We were answering questions as they were coming up.
Okay, good. I'm not seeing any questions. Are we good? Was the NSF?
One just came in.
Oh, this is a good one for Mark.
No, I don't think so. They're very good at clarifying. If we had questions where we need clarifications, I think we got direct, useful feedback from the NSF team, but I don't recall. I don't think we asked for any feedback on the content or direction from them.
How big is the structure of the management team? How big is our leadership team right now? Probably about 12. About 12 people on our leadership team right now.
The question about time to complete it, for us, it was very iterative. So we would have like a couple of weeks of writing where people had different homework assignments. We'd take that, mash it up, send it back out to people, give them a week to respond, etc. So we didn't like have people just go off and writing and then coming back in with one push in and out. It was more of a collaborative, ongoing process for a couple of months. Yeah, no problem. I'll just say good luck to everyone. Someone's
we wish you all the
gonna
best.
get it. And then if it's someone on this call, we expect someone to buy us a beer at the next professional meeting.
That's right. Is your external evaluator from the institution? Our external evaluator is completely independent. And actually the story there is kind of interesting. Our first external evaluator was a contract, another sub-award from the University of Tennessee. And the person that was the lead at that institution ended up getting long COVID and just could not continue, unfortunately. I think she's doing okay. I kind of lost track of her. Do you know how she's doing, Mark? I don't know how she's doing personally, but
yeah, I think slowly making a comeback. Yeah.
Yeah, but then there was no one really there that was able to kind of move the work forward, and we ended up pivoting to a woman by the name of Lynn Nordstrom, who has her own consulting firm here at the university here in New Mexico. And she consults with and contracts with and some other really large NSF grants here at UNM. And so we were able to connect with her, which has actually ended up being a real advantage to us because she's here in New Mexico. We meet with her in physically in person much more often, which has been a real advantage. And so we were able to redo that contract and ended up being a little bit of an administrative burden. But other than that, we did not lose a whole lot of time kind of recalibrating our evaluative processes. And we're able to expand them even. So
Another one of those surprises.
yep. You bet. Good luck to you. Good luck to all of you so much.
Great. Thanks, everyone. It's good seeing everyone. You jumped to my next thing.